Good morning. I'm Jack Blackhurst. I'm the Executive Director of Air Force Research Laboratory, and I'm pleased to be here today and hope all of you are as well and are enjoying this session as we begin it today. This is an interesting week for all of us, and as you know, it's been kind of interesting for us trying to figure out how to best to educate and inform our partners and business associates under this COVID-19. So this is an interesting exercise that we're going to do this week. I want to thank Wright Brothers Institute for assembling this and putting it together, as well as all the other sponsors, including Dayton Development Coalition, and all the other speakers and people that were involved in putting this together. Because as you know, these are tough things to do, especially in this environment. And the virtual makes it interesting. It also makes it easy for folks. So hopefully we get a large attendance in the sessions today and for the following days this week. I'd like to follow on with what General Pringle did. She basically identified her 3 priorities. And over the next couple of hours, we're going to talk about a number of subjects. And I just wanted to kind of hit those subjects briefly to update you. And then I'll turn it over to those folks to actually give you the in-depth kinds of activities. It's been an interesting year for AFRL. Obviously, we have a new commander. COVID-19 has caused AFRL to react differently, if you will, from the day-to-day business that we've been doing. But I think we've accommodated and we've been successful in achieving our goals of continuing to do research for the United States Air Force. Several things that have occurred this year, though, that I want to highlight is, so Jackie Janning's going to talk to you about the 2030 activity. And as you know, that S&T strategy was developed a year or so ago, signed off by the Secretary. And this past year, we've been focused on implementation. So Tim Sekulich had charge of that for this past year, basically doing design of 2030, figuring out for the 3 objectives within that study, what are the things that we ought to be doing, and kept the leadership informed all along the way. What Jackie Janning-Lask is going to do now is basically take those design issues and plans and implement them. And so what she's going to do is she's going to talk to you about her efforts over this next year to implement the 3 objectives of 2030. Okay, so let's go on to the boss mentioned Transformational Capabilities Office. You're going to hear from Chris Ristic. Chris Ristic is going to talk about how the study basically says we need to allocate 20% of our 6-3 portfolio to transformational projects. So what we've been doing over the last several months is trying to figure out how to allocate funding to those projects, as well as getting out of other projects to free up those monies. And so what he's going to do is he's going to tell you about how that transformational office is going to be formed, what their objectives are, what they're going to try to accomplish. And for those of you that do business with AFRL, clearly you're going to be interested in tracking the status and the progress of the Transformational Capabilities Office. The boss mentioned one AFRL, 2 services. So we are now approaching the 1st anniversary of the United States Space Force that occurred last December when that was stood up. And we've been working very closely with Space Force folks to figure out how the AFRL Research Laboratory can support the Space Force research activities. And so over the past year, we've really had a number of meetings looking at, first of all, understanding where Space Force is going. Second of all, looking at their priorities, their gaps, and where they need technology. And then finally, addressing those gaps for the Space Force to make sure that our S&T program is aligned appropriately. So when you hear that briefing today from Dr. Kelly Hammett, he has now been assigned as the Deputy TEO. What that means is he's the primary guy in AFRL to focus on space activities. He's currently working for General Pringle, as well as sharing his duties as his director of the Directed Energy Director. But his focus, and he's going to tell you about this today, is essentially that making sure that we are aligning our research programs to Space Force priorities. So I think you'll find that very interesting. And again, if your business or partners with AFRL, you'll probably want to follow along in terms of this next year as to how that goes. The third area is AFWorks and Air Force Ventures. Now you're going to get an opportunity to talk with Colonel Diller and Jason Rafsey today to basically understand where AFWERX is going. As you may recall, AFWERX, as we call AFWERX 1.0, was sort of the innovation unit was stood up a couple of years ago, basically to change the way the Air Force approaches innovation down at the base level all the way up to the headquarters. And so they have performed, superbly over the last several years in terms of identifying new innovation opportunities, bringing folks in that we normally don't deal with, and just totally changing that innovation spirit within the Air Force. This past summer, the AFWERX, or as we called it, AFWERX 1.0, was changed to AFWERX 2.0, which also added the Air Force Ventures Group and the Prime. And so the Air Force Ventures Group primarily is focused on commercial applications. If you believe that most of the technology in the world today is developed by commercial companies versus what it used to be in the past, then we need to take advantage of that, and we need to take clear understanding of where the commercial folks are going and use that commercial technology to advance the warfighting capability of the United States Air Force. And so that particular group, led by Jason Repke, is basically going to explain to you how they're going to do business under this next new year. And the third group is really Prime. And Prime basically is, if you take the three divisions, the first division is called Spark because it's looking for innovation ideas. The second division is really focused on commercial applications. And the third is really, how do we take both of those and actually go out and test those kind of capabilities for things that we're not doing in the United States Air Force today. So take, for example, the first Prime Pathfinder, Agility Prime. And it's basically about flying cars. So I can tell you the Air Force Research Laboratory is not developing flying cars today. And so this gives us a great opportunity to consider the aspect of flying cars and whether they could actually be flying for the United States Air Force. I think there's about 50 primes or vendors that have interest in flying cars. And so they're going to tell you today about the plan for that this next year and how we're doing. And so it's exciting. And I think you'll really enjoy the discussion with Colonel Diller and Jason Rapton. Partnerships. And so you're going to hear from Brian McGilton, and he's been working the partnership piece of 2030. And the goal there really is to, if I had two words to describe 2030, I would say outward versus inward. I think one of the key things that our secretary wanted us to do was look outward for technology capability, whether it was within academia, industry, non-traditional industry partners, and to basically look and make sure that we're taking advantage of the best of the best. And so what Brian has been doing is trying to figure out the methodology that we do for doing partnering. Now, there's lots of various capabilities and lots of different methods for partnering with the Air Force Research Laboratory. The key benefit for us, though, is finding out that those are the ones that we definitely want to partner with and clearly are critical to the success of our programs. And so he's going to spend time talking to you about what he's currently doing and what the plans look for this next year. Workforce. So one of the goals, building the best team, was the third commander's intent that General Pringle mentioned to you. So clearly, she's very interested in the workforce. And we've done a number of studies over the last year to say, what should the workforce look like in 2030? And so what Julia Pericott's going to do is talk to you about a new human capital pipeline that we've established, which basically takes the capital pipeline starting at the K through 12 STEM, through internships, through hiring, through bringing on board to a career in AFRL, and then going to the alumni phase in terms of there's lots of folks that have worked at AFRL and either retired or separated or left for other reasons that could really be a benefit to the AFRL in terms of connection. And so she's going to tell you about this human capital pipeline and what you might be interested in, where you might be able to play in one or more of those phases of that particular activity. The last presentation this morning is about Service to Connect. And so one of the things that AFRL has been trying to do is try and figure out the best way for you as outside members of the community to connect with AFRL. One of the biggest complaints we hear all the time is the fact that you really don't know who to talk to. You know, if you go back years ago, we used to have telephone books, and telephone books basically had names and cell phone numbers of people and specified technologies you could pick up and you could call. Well, that obviously has gone away. So what we're trying to do is come up with a methodology that allows you to provide a front door to AFRL to answer your questions. And so what Liz is going to talk to you about is a program that they put together called Tech Connect that's basically going to enable you to be able to do that. And I encourage you to use it, try it out, see if it works. And if it doesn't work, give us feedback. A couple other topics I wanted to talk about before I close out. So the next topic is small business. And if you're a small business out there and you're listening to us, you clearly understand that we had some challenges and opportunities this past year. As we ramped up the capability, increased the number of small business opportunities, it created challenges for the small business office here within the AFRL. I can tell you that that's really key and top on our radar screen, and that we are working diligently to improve the way we execute the Small Business Innovation Research Program. And so what we're doing right now is developing a master schedule. We'll have that master schedule out in about the next month or so, and we'll have a public affairs plan to go along with it, so that anyone interested in what small business is doing, whether you're a small business entrepreneur, whether you're a congressional staffer, regardless of your role in terms of the small business program, you will be able to know exactly what our plan is, and we'll follow the plan until you know when those opportunities come available, when you will be provided feedback, and so totally improve the overall process that we have today. And so I think that'll be a great opportunity. And I'm looking for your feedback in that respect. The last topic really has to do with digital engineering. If you've read the newspapers, if you saw Dr. Roper's AFA speech, you'll fully understand that the world is going digital. And what does that mean for acquisition? What that means for acquisition is that things that we used to do, we used to build prototypes, we used to fly prototypes and learn from those and then adjust for prior to final production. What digital engineering allows you to do is to do all of that in a digital world. Allows you to build the prototype, test the prototype before you actually bend metal. And so the thinking here is that we, the United States Air Force, needs to get our act together and basically start incorporating digital engineering within our acquisition workforce. Well, what does that mean? Well, when you think of Air Force Material Command, you're thinking of 86,000 people. So how do you educate 86,000 people on digital engineering principles? Clearly, everybody has a different need. So if you're a manager, you probably need a basic understanding of digital engineering. If you're actually a bench scientist, you probably need to know a little bit more about digital engineering in terms of software acquisition tools and the like. And so what we're trying to do, figure out right now is how do we train and educate our workforce in digital engineering? It's a tough task. It's going to take a number of years. But clearly, if you have capabilities out there to provide training or education within digital engineering, we are more than interested in talking to you and trying to figure out how to do this. In the aspect of digital engineering in terms of the products, we do have a number of our program executive officers that are effectively utilizing digital engineering in their actual products that they're developing. We're going to see more of that over the next couple of years. And if you're a vendor or a prime or someone who does development and prototyping, that sort of activity, I would encourage you to bring digital engineering into your line of effort as you bring it to the Air Force, because we're going to be looking for that. And whether you're a contracting officer or a finance officer, you all need to understand what digital engineering is about as you bring that into your contracts and those sorts of things. And so it's an exciting opportunity. It's also a challenge, and it's definitely a challenge for the Air Force Material Command to pull together a digital engineering model and implement it within the United States Air Force. So those topics are all that you're going to hear about, except for, I think you're going to hear small business tomorrow. Digital engineering, you'll probably hear somewhere during the week. And so I would encourage you to listen intently about where we're going on digital engineering. I guess as I wrap up, I say to you that this has been an exciting and challenging year for AFRL. The things that you're going to hear about today are new. There are things that have come out of 2030. There are things that have come out of other bringing on AFWorks to the AFRL organization, the Space Force activity, all brand new kinds of things that provide opportunities and challenges for AFRL. So I hope that you listen intently. I hope that you Think about these things in your day-to-day life and how they might how they might affect you, and how you might implement the information that you learned today. With that, I'm going to close, and I'm going to thank you, first of all, for participating in the exercise today. I would like now to turn it over to Jackie Janning Last, who is going to talk to you about the S&T 2030 study and her efforts to implement those activities in FY21.